Forgiving what you cannot forget. Forgiveness is often considered a gift we give to others, but in truth, it is a process we embark upon for ourselves. It is the act of releasing ourselves from the burden of anger, pain, and resentment, but it does not always mean forgetting. The phrase forgiving what you cannot forget touches on a paradox that many people grapple with in their lives. How can we forgive someone for something that we can never truly erase from our memory? The burden of memory. When we experience a betrayal, hurt, or deep injustice, our minds tend to fixate on those moments. The pain is etched into our memory, replaying itself over and over, sometimes without our control. Forgetting feels impossible, as though the event is seared into our very being, reminding us of how vulnerable we were, or how deeply we were wounded. In this context, the idea of forgiveness can feel like a contradiction. How can we forgive something we cannot forget? The key lies in understanding that forgiveness is not about erasing the past or pretending the hurt never happened. It is not about excusing the wrongdoer or diminishing the pain we have experienced. Forgiveness is about acknowledging the hurt, sitting with it, and choosing to release its hold on us. It is about deciding that, despite what happened, we will no longer allow the memory of the offense to control our present and future. The emotional release. Forgiveness can be thought of as a form of emotional release. When we forgive what we cannot forget, we allow ourselves to move forward without continually carrying the weight of anger and resentment. This does not mean the memory disappears, it simply means we stop using it as a weapon against ourselves. We no longer allow it to define who we are or dictate how we live our lives. The act of forgiveness is often a decision, not a feeling. It is an intention that can be made even when the pain is still raw. While the memory might always remain with us in some form, forgiveness allows it to take up less space in our hearts. It shifts our focus from what was done to us to how we choose to respond. It is about reclaiming our power and choosing peace over bitterness. The process of healing forgiveness is not a one-time event, but rather a process, sometimes a long, complicated one. The hurt may resurface, and we may find ourselves needing to forgive again and again. It is important to be patient with ourselves and understand that healing is not linear. Some days will feel easier than others, but each step toward forgiveness is a step toward emotional freedom. Forgiving what you cannot forget does not mean condoning the behavior that caused the harm. It is not about absolving someone else from their responsibility. It is about taking back control over your own heart, finding peace in the present, and refusing to let the past continue to dictate your emotional state. Letting go of the grudge. Carrying a grudge can weigh us down, often affecting not only our emotional well-being but our physical health as well. Chronic stress and unresolved anger can manifest in a variety of ways, from anxiety to physical ailments. By forgiving, we release ourselves from these chains. Forgiveness is a gift not only for the one who wronged us but for ourselves as well, enabling us to move forward with our lives. Forgiving what you cannot forget is an act of profound courage and strength. It does not mean the pain disappears, nor does it mean that we forget what happened. Rather, it is an acknowledgement that while the past is a part of us, it does not have to define our future. By choosing forgiveness, we free ourselves from the grip of hurt, allowing us to move toward healing, peace, and emotional freedom. The journey of forgiveness is one of reclaiming our peace of mind and finding the strength to live fully, even with the scars of the past still visible. Forgiving what you cannot forget, the burden of memory. Memory is a powerful force. It shapes our identity, influences our decisions, and determines how we relate to the world around us. However, not all memories are comforting or empowering. Some memories bring pain, regret, or resentment, particularly those tied to past betrayals, injustices, or deep wounds. These memories can linger, haunting us with their vividness and weight, and they often create a barrier between who we are in the present and the peace we seek for the future. Forgiveness, in the context of these painful memories, presents a challenge. How can we forgive when the memory of the hurt still feels so fresh, still feels so much a part of us? How can we release anger or resentment when the image of the wound is etched in our minds, constantly reminding us of the betrayal, the broken trust, or the wrong done? The weight of memory. The memories that hurt the most are the ones we cannot shake off, those that replay in our minds at night, those that intrude in quiet moments, and those that make us react with anger or fear. These memories can be a kind of emotional imprisonment, a cage that keeps us tethered to a painful past. Often, we think of forgiveness as a way of letting go of this pain. However, the memory remains, and so the struggle intensifies. How can we forgive what we cannot forget? The emotional burden of such memories is heavy. Every time we revisit the hurt, consciously or unconsciously, it triggers a cycle of anger, sadness, or frustration. The mind and body often stay in a state of heightened alertness, as if the wound is still open, still raw. It is not simply the act of the offense that burdens us. It is the constant replaying of it in our thoughts, over and over, with no escape. The paradox of forgiveness. Forgiveness becomes a paradox in this context. On one hand, we are encouraged to forgive to free ourselves from the grip of negative emotions. We are told that forgiveness can heal us, offering a path to peace. But on the other hand, the memory refuses to fade. Every time we try to forgive, the memory creeps back in, making it feel like forgiveness is incomplete or even impossible. But forgiveness does not require us to forget. In fact, forgetting is often beyond our control, especially when it comes to significant emotional wounds. What forgiveness requires is a shift in how we relate to those memories. It is about choosing not to allow the memory to define us or to control our lives. Forgiveness means letting go of the grip the past has on us, even when the past remains alive in our minds. The power of choice. Forgiveness, in this sense, is a choice we make, not because we can forget the hurt, but because we recognize that holding on to resentment and anger gives that hurt more power than it deserves. The decision to forgive is not about erasing the past, but about choosing not to allow the past to dictate our emotional responses, our future decisions, or our self-worth. Forgiveness is about releasing the emotional charge that the memory holds over us. It is not about excusing what was done, nor is it about condoning or forgetting the injustice. It is about disempowering the memory, no longer allowing it to control our present or rob us of our peace. It is a conscious act of emotional release, where we allow ourselves to let go of the negativity tied to the event, even as the memory lingers. Healing beyond the memory. Forgiveness, even when we cannot forget, is a step toward healing. Healing is not the absence of memory. It is the transformation of the memory from a source of pain to one of wisdom or acceptance. The hurt we have experienced may always be a part of our story, but it does not have to be the defining chapter. As we forgive, we create space for growth, for reclaiming our emotional energy, and for finding peace despite what happened. This journey is not easy, and it often requires time and patience. Some days will feel harder than others, and some memories may continue to haunt us. But each day we choose forgiveness, we reduce the power that memory holds over us. We move closer to the peace that comes not from forgetting, but from learning how to live with those memories without letting them dominate our lives. Forgiving what you cannot forget is not about pretending the hurt never happened or forcing yourself to forget the pain. It is about reclaiming your freedom from the grip of the past, acknowledging the memories, and choosing to stop allowing them to control your emotional world. In doing so, you begin to transform the burden of memory into a source of strength, understanding, and resilience. The act of forgiveness does not erase the past, but it allows you to live beyond it. Forgiving what you cannot forget. The emotional release. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as a singular, final moment in which we release the burden of anger or resentment. However, when it comes to the deep wounds that accompany lasting memories, forgiveness is a complex, evolving process. For many, forgiving what we cannot forget is not about wiping away the past, but about finding the emotional release that allows us to move forward. Even when the memory of hurt remains vivid, forgiveness offers a pathway to emotional liberation. The nature of emotional burdens. When we experience deep emotional pain, whether from betrayal, loss, abuse, or injustice, the memories of those experiences often remain with us, replaying in our minds long after the event has passed. These memories are more than just recollections of the past. They carry emotional weight that can affect our present behavior, thoughts, and relationships. The anger, sadness, fear, or shame tied to these memories often lingers, casting a shadow over our lives. Holding on to these negative emotions is like carrying a heavy emotional load. The feelings of bitterness and resentment keep us tied to the past, even if we desire to move on. Over time, the burden of these emotions can affect not just our mental well-being, but our physical health, too. Stress, anxiety, depression, and even chronic pain can result from unprocessed emotional wounds. The paradox of forgiveness and memory. Forgiving what you cannot forget is a difficult, paradoxical concept. The memory itself may never disappear. It may remain a part of our personal history, often resurfacing at unexpected moments. The act of forgiveness, in this context, does not require the erasure of these memories. Rather, it asks us to release their emotional hold on us. It is about making peace with the past and allowing the emotions tied to those memories to lose their power. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about choosing how we respond to what we cannot change. We cannot always control the thoughts and memories that come to mind, but we can control how we allow them to affect us. Forgiveness, in this sense, is an emotional release, a decision to free ourselves from the emotional weight of the past. Emotional release. Letting go of the burden. Emotional release through forgiveness is a process that involves letting go of the negative feelings tied to the event, even if the memory remains intact. This does not mean excusing or justifying the actions of those who hurt us. Rather, it means acknowledging the pain, and then deciding not to let it dictate our emotional state. By forgiving, we choose to stop allowing the hurt to fuel anger or resentment. We begin to shift our focus from the event itself to our emotional freedom. The act of forgiveness offers the opportunity to unburden ourselves from the negativity that has weighed us down for so long. This release does not necessarily happen all at once. It may come in stages, often requiring repeated acts of forgiveness, especially when the memory resurfaces. Each time we choose to forgive, we loosen the grip of the negative emotion attached to the memory. Eventually, the emotional charge tied to the past diminishes, allowing us to experience relief, peace, and freedom. The role of compassion and self-understanding. Forgiving what we cannot forget often requires us to cultivate compassion, not only for those who have wronged us, but also for ourselves. The path to emotional release is made easier when we understand that our feelings of hurt and anger are valid. It is natural to feel pain when we are wronged, but holding on to these emotions indefinitely serves only to harm ourselves. Compassion for ourselves allows us to release the belief that we must remain attached to the hurt in order to protect ourselves or seek justice. It is possible to release the grip of the past while still honoring our feelings. Self-compassion allows us to acknowledge the hurt without allowing it to define us or our future. By treating ourselves with kindness and patience, we open the door to emotional release. Finding peace in the present. Forgiveness offers a powerful path to healing, but it requires practice and perseverance. The goal is not to forget or dismiss the past but to release its emotional charge so that we can live more fully in the present. When we forgive what we cannot forget, we stop allowing past hurts to dictate our thoughts, reactions, and choices. We take back our power, choosing peace over prolonged suffering. The emotional release that comes with forgiveness may not erase the scars, but it allows us to carry them with greater peace and understanding. Rather than seeing our pain as a permanent part of us, forgiveness helps us transform it into something that no longer holds the same weight. Forgiving what you cannot forget is not about erasing the past or pretending the hurt did not occur. It is about making a conscious choice to release the emotional burden that has kept us tethered to that past. Through forgiveness, we free ourselves from the grip of negative emotions and reclaim our peace. The memories may remain, but they no longer have the same power over us. In forgiving, we experience an emotional release that allows us to move forward, not with forgetfulness, but with a newfound freedom from the past's emotional weight. Forgiving what you cannot forget. The process of healing. Healing from deep emotional wounds is rarely a quick or linear process. It involves layers of reflection, emotion, and, ultimately, transformation. One of the most complex parts of this journey is the challenge of forgiving what you cannot forget. It is one thing to forgive someone for a minor wrong that you can easily move past. But when the pain is profound, the memory lingers, and the hurt feels insurmountable, the path to forgiveness becomes a slow, deliberate act of healing. The idea of forgiving something we cannot forget may seem paradoxical. After all, how can you forgive something that still affects you so deeply? How can you release the past when the memories persist? Like a shadow that follows you everywhere? The process of forgiving what you cannot forget is not about forgetting the pain or pretending the wound did not exist. It is about learning to heal despite the memory's presence, and allowing that healing to guide you toward emotional freedom. Acknowledging the hurt. The first step in the healing process is acknowledging the hurt. Many people think that forgiveness means simply moving past the pain or ignoring the impact of what has happened. However, true healing begins when we confront the emotions tied to the hurt. Allowing ourselves to feel anger, sadness, betrayal, or fear without judgment. Acknowledging the hurt means giving ourselves permission to be vulnerable. It is about accepting that pain is a valid part of the human experience. Without this acknowledgement, we cannot begin to heal. We cannot skip this step because the emotional scars are part of who we are, and denying their existence only prolongs the suffering. Healing, in this sense, is not about avoiding pain, but about allowing ourselves to face it with compassion and grace. Understanding forgiveness as a choice. Once we have allowed ourselves to feel the pain, the next step is understanding that forgiveness is a conscious choice. Forgiveness is not a passive experience, nor is it something that happens overnight. It is an intentional act in which we decide to let go of the anger, resentment, or desire for revenge that holds us hostage to the past. Forgiving what you cannot forget requires us to reframe the situation. We are not forgiving to erase the past, nor are we forgiving to make the person who hurt us feel better. We forgive to free ourselves. When we choose forgiveness, we release the emotional grip that the past has on us. This does not excuse the wrong done, but it allows us to regain control over our emotional world. Forgiveness becomes a way of reclaiming our power, choosing peace over perpetual suffering. Gradual release of resentment. Resentment is often the poison we continue to consume, hoping it will harm the other person. But it only harms us. The process of forgiving what you cannot forget involves slowly letting go of the resentment that keeps us emotionally bound to the person or event that caused the pain. This is not an easy process, and it often requires time and effort. Some days may feel like we have made significant progress, while other days may feel like we have taken a step backward. Healing is rarely linear. One of the key aspects of this release is self-compassion. We have to remind ourselves that we are worthy of peace, regardless of the hurt that has been inflicted upon us. It is also important to recognize that this release is not for the other person, it is for us. We are the ones who get to decide how long we allow resentment to control us. By choosing to let go, we break the cycle of pain and begin to create space for healing. Accepting the past, but not letting it define us. Part of the healing process is learning to accept that the past is a part of us, but it does not have to define us. We may never forget the pain, but we can choose how it shapes our identity. Forgiving what we cannot forget is about understanding that while the past has an undeniable influence, it does not have to continue to determine how we live in the present or move toward the future. Healing involves integrating the painful experience into our larger narrative without allowing it to dominate our story. It is about realizing that while the memory may stay with us, it does not have to control our actions, our self-worth, or our relationships moving forward. This acceptance allows us to release the emotional charge that ties us to the pain, allowing us to see the full scope of our lives and who we are becoming. Rebuilding trust in ourselves and others. Forgiveness also involves rebuilding trust, both in ourselves and in others. When we have been hurt, it is natural to feel hesitant or afraid to trust again. Part of healing is acknowledging this fear, but not allowing it to prevent us from opening ourselves to love, connection, or new opportunities. Forgiveness helps us trust that we can move forward, that we are resilient enough to protect ourselves from future harm, and that we can let go of past grievances without sacrificing our peace of mind. Healing does not require that we immediately forget or that we place ourselves back in situations that could harm us. It is about cultivating a sense of trust in our own ability to move forward and make better choices, while understanding that forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation or the resumption of past relationships. Sometimes, healing means setting boundaries, learning self-care, and allowing ourselves to grow in ways that protect our emotional well-being. Finding peace in the present moment. Ultimately, the goal of forgiving what you cannot forget is to find peace in the present. The memory may remain, but it no longer holds the power to dictate your thoughts, feelings, or future. Peace comes when we stop allowing past wounds to take up residence in our hearts. Healing, in this sense, is about reclaiming the space in our lives that the pain once occupied and filling it with new experiences, new relationships, and new possibilities. Through the process of forgiveness, we learn to release the emotional shackles of the past and step into a life that is free from its grip. This does not mean we forget the lessons we have learned or deny the reality of the hurt. It means we choose to live with a sense of freedom that allows us to move forward with strength and grace. Forgiving what you cannot forget is a profound act of healing that requires patience, self-compassion, and time. It is not about forgetting the pain or excusing the wrong that was done. It is about freeing ourselves from the emotional weight that holds us back from living fully. The process of healing through forgiveness is an ongoing journey that requires us to confront the past, choose peace over resentment, and accept that while we cannot change what happened, we can choose how it impacts our future. Through this process, we transform our wounds into sources of wisdom and resilience, ultimately finding peace and emotional freedom despite what we can never forget. Forgiving what you cannot forget. Letting go of the grudge. Holding a grudge is a natural human response when we have been hurt. When we have experienced betrayal, injustice, or deep emotional pain, it is common to feel anger, resentment, or a desire for retribution. These emotions may seem justified, especially when the hurt feels significant. However, holding on to a grudge for too long can be more damaging to our own well-being than to the person or situation we are angry with. The process of forgiving what you cannot forget is deeply tied to letting go of the grudge, a conscious, deliberate choice to free ourselves from the negative emotions that bind us to the past. The weight of a grudge. A grudge can feel like a heavy emotional burden, one that we carry with us in both subtle and overt ways. It can consume our thoughts, affect our interactions with others, and distort our perspective on life. Every time we remember the hurt or injustice, we are feeding the grudge, giving it more power over us. What is often not realized is that a grudge does not just affect the person or situation we are holding it against, it also limits our own emotional freedom. The longer we hold on to a grudge, the more it clouds our ability to experience peace, joy, and new opportunities. This emotional weight often accumulates over time. What starts as a small irritation or unresolved feeling grows into something that occupies our hearts and minds. The more we rehearse the wrong in our heads, the more attached we become to the anger and resentment, until it feels almost impossible to let go. But holding a grudge, no matter how justified, only serves to keep us stuck in the past. The illusion of control. One of the reasons it can be so difficult to let go of a grudge is the false sense of control it gives us. When we hold on to anger, we feel as if we are punishing the person who hurt us, holding them accountable for the pain they caused. In reality, though, the grudge is hurting us more than it is affecting the other person. Most of the time, the person we are angry with is completely unaware of the internal storm we are carrying. Meanwhile, we continue to carry the weight of anger, bitterness, or resentment, unaware of how much it impacts our emotional and physical health. Forgiveness, however, offers us the chance to release that false sense of control. By letting go of the grudge, we stop giving the person or situation power over us. Instead of letting the past dictate our emotions and future, we reclaim our emotional freedom. Letting go is not about excusing what was done, but about refusing to allow it to control our happiness any longer. The role of acceptance. Letting go of a grudge does not mean forgetting what happened or condoning the behavior that hurt us. It simply means accepting that we cannot change the past. We cannot undo the wrongs done to us, but we do have the power to decide how much emotional energy we want to invest in them going forward. Acceptance is an important part of forgiveness. It is about coming to terms with what happened, acknowledging the hurt and then choosing to let go of the resentment tied to it. This is where the healing begins. Acceptance does not mean that we agree with what occurred, nor does it mean that we will never feel pain or sadness about it again. It simply means that we recognize the reality of the situation, and we decide not to let the past dominate our present and future. The freedom in letting go. The ultimate gift of forgiveness is freedom. When we forgive and let go of the grudge, we free ourselves from the emotional chains that keep us tethered to the past. Forgiveness is an act of self-liberation. It allows us to step away from the role of victim, release the grip of anger, and reclaim our peace. It gives us the freedom to move forward with our lives without the shadow of past wrongs hanging over us. Letting go of the grudge may not be easy, and it may take time, especially if the hurt was deep or the betrayal significant. But it is an essential step in reclaiming emotional health. When we stop feeding the grudge, we begin to make room for other, more positive emotions, like compassion, understanding, and hope. In time, the hurt loses its power over us, and we can begin to look at the situation with more clarity, perhaps even gaining valuable lessons or insights that allow us to grow stronger. The healing power of compassion. One of the most powerful ways to let go of a grudge is to cultivate compassion, first for ourselves and then for others. Compassion is not about excusing hurtful behavior or forgetting the wrongs committed. It is about understanding that, like us, the person who hurt us is human, and they may have acted out of their own pain, fear, or misunderstanding. Compassion for ourselves means recognizing that holding on to a grudge harms us emotionally and physically. By choosing forgiveness, we are taking a step toward emotional healing, freeing ourselves from the constant weight of anger or resentment. Compassion for others means recognizing their humanity and allowing for the possibility of growth, even if it is not evident at the moment. It is not about condoning their behavior but about understanding that forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. This compassion can be an essential ingredient in letting go of the grudge, shifting our focus from the wrongdoer to our own healing. The ongoing practice of letting go. Forgiveness and letting go of a grudge is an ongoing practice. It may require us to make the conscious choice to forgive every day, especially when old memories and emotions resurface. Healing is not a destination but a journey, and sometimes, we may find ourselves needing to forgive again and again, until the weight of the grudge is no longer a burden. The more we practice forgiveness, the more natural it becomes. Over time, we begin to notice that the pain no longer holds the same intensity, and we are able to recall the memory without it overwhelming us. Slowly but surely, we release the hold the grudge has on us, allowing peace to replace the anger and resentment. Forgiving what you cannot forget and letting go of the grudge is a transformative act of emotional liberation. It is a process of choosing peace over pain, freedom over resentment, and healing over holding on to the past. While it is not always easy, forgiveness is ultimately for us, not the person who wronged us. By letting go of the grudge, we create space for new possibilities, for growth, and for a life free from the chains of past hurts. The act of forgiving is an invitation to reclaim our emotional well-being and to move forward in life with a lighter, freer heart. Thank you for your attention. By BFD. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about choosing how we respond to what we cannot change.